Elizabeth, what are you doing out here? Trevor Johnson's voice cracked as rain hammered his shoulders. His 68-year-old housekeeper, the woman who'd been the silent backbone of his home for over a decade, sat hunched beneath the oak tree, her silver hair plastered to her face, tears streaming down weathered cheeks as she ate cold pasta from a styrofoam container. He'd watched her press his shirts with arthritic hands 1,000 times, but he'd never seen this. Raw, desperate hunger mixed with shame so thick it choked him. And when she looked up at him with eyes full of secrets she'd been carrying alone, everything he thought he understood about his carefully controlled world shattered like glass. Every morning started the same way. Coffee at 5:45 a.m. Black, no sugar. Protein shake, exactly 400 calories. By 6:30, he was at his desk, 3 monitors glowing with numbers that used to mean something. 5 years since the accident. 5 years since he lost Sarah and Lily at that intersection. 5 years of building walls so high that nothing, no one could ever hurt him again. This was Trevor's life now. Successful, isolated, frozen. His mansion was a mausoleum. 7 empty bedrooms. Rooms he walked past but never entered. A daughter's door he couldn't bring himself to open. The only other person who existed in his world was her. Elizabeth arrived every morning at 7 a.m. sharp. Silver hair always pulled back in a neat bun. Uniform pressed despite its obvious age. She cleaned, organized, kept his hollow life running. Quiet, never pried, never asked about the closed doors or the hidden photographs. Just did her work and disappeared. He barely knew her. She was furniture. Part of the routine. Invisible. Until one Tuesday morning when he caught her dusting a family photo she wasn't supposed to touch. Their eyes met for just a moment, and he saw something that made his chest tighten. Sadness. Understanding. Like she knew what it meant to lose everything. She looked away quickly, but that moment stuck with him. That week, he hosted investors for dinner. 8 people, gourmet food flown in from Manhattan, conversations about market disruptions and quarterly projections. Elizabeth served silently. He noticed things he'd never noticed before. The way her hands trembled slightly lifting trays. How she favored her right leg. The wince she tried to hide when reaching for glasses. One guest snapped his fingers at her like she was a servant in a period drama. After they left, Trevor was working late when he saw her through his office window. Elizabeth, standing over the garbage bin, staring at mountains of barely touched food about to be thrown away. She hesitated, looked around, then quickly scooped some into a container and slipped it into her bag. Her shoulders were shaking. He said nothing, just watched her leave. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. He kept seeing those trembling hands. Why would someone shake over garbage food? What was happening in her life that he knew absolutely nothing about? Thursday came. His meeting ended early, something that never happened. He was driving home when the storm hit. Sudden. Violent. Spring rain that turned the world gray. He pulled through his gate thinking about work, about the emptiness waiting for him inside that house. Then he saw her. Elizabeth. Under the oak tree. Soaking wet. Hunched over. Crying while eating from that same foam container. His foot slammed the brake. Heart pounding. Not from fear, from something else, something he couldn't name. He threw the door open and ran. Rain hit him like a wall. When he got close enough, he saw her face. Shame. Raw, crushing, soul-destroying shame. Tears mixing with rain. Elizabeth, what are you doing out here? She looked up, terrified. Mr. Johnson, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. Tell me. He knelt in the mud, his expensive suit ruined, none of it matching. Please. Tell me what's happening. And there, under that tree, with rain pouring down on both of them, everything came spilling out. What she told him in the next 5 minutes broke something inside him he'd thought was already dead. And what he decided to do about it would change all three of their lives forever. But before we go any further, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about wealth, family, and what it truly means to be alive. Stay with me. Let me take you back, before the rain, before the revelation, before Trevor Johnson learned that the fortress he'd built to protect himself had become his prison. The alarm pierced the silence at 5:45 a.m., as it had every morning for the past 5 years. Trevor Johnson's hand found the button before his eyes fully opened. Coffee. Black. Protein shake, 400 calories exactly. By 6:30, 3 monitors glowed in his home office, stock tickers scrolling like prayers to a god who no longer listened. The mansion sprawled around him. 12,000 square feet of marble floors and vaulted ceilings that swallowed sound. Everything in its place. Nothing out of order. The living room furniture sat arranged like a museum display, untouched except by Elizabeth's weekly dusting. The formal dining table could seat 14 but had served only him for half a decade. In the hallway, rectangular shadows marked where family photos once hung, the walls lighter in those spots, like ghosts of happiness. Sarah and Lily. 5 years since the intersection, the drunk driver, the phone call that ended everything. He'd locked Lily's bedroom door the day after the funeral and never opened it again. Easier to seal it away than to face the stuffed animals on her bed, the science fair trophy on her shelf, the future that died with her. His tech company had tripled in value since then. Board meetings, venture capital, acquisitions. He moved through it all with mechanical precision. Success without satisfaction. Achievement without purpose. Control was the only thing that kept the chaos at bay. At 7 a.m. sharp, he heard the side door open. Elizabeth, as punctual as death. She'd been with him for over a decade. Hired when Lily was still learning to walk. Now she moved through his pristine rooms like a shadow, keeping his sterile world running. He barely knew her, really. Didn't know where she lived, if she had family, what she did when she wasn't here. That was the point. Distance was safe. From his office doorway, he watched her work in the living room. She moved slower than before, favoring her left side. Her uniform, though clean, was fraying at the collar. When she reached up to polish a picture frame he'd missed during his purge, one small photo of Sarah he'd forgotten behind a plant, her hands trembled. She stared at it for a long moment, her weathered face softening with something that looked like understanding, like grief that mirrored his own. She glanced up, caught his eyes on her, and quickly set the frame down, turning back to her work. Trevor said nothing. But something in his chest shifted, just barely. A crack in ice that had frozen solid for 5 long years. Tuesday evening brought 8 investors to his dining room table. Their laughter too loud, their watches too expensive. The catered meal cost more than most people's monthly rent. Wagyu beef, truffle risotto, wine older than some of the men drinking it. Strategic conversations flowed around market disruptions and acquisition targets, the kind of talk that once energized Trevor but now just filled the silence. Elizabeth moved between them like a ghost, refilling glasses, replacing plates. No one looked at her. Not once. She was furniture with hands, a function rather than a person. Trevor found himself watching her instead of listening to the pitch about blockchain integration. Her hands shook when she lifted the wine bottle. She favored her right leg, weight shifting uncomfortably. When she reached across the table to clear plates, she winced, a quick flash of pain across her face that she tried to hide. "Hey!" One of the investors snapped his fingers at her without looking up from his phone. "More water." Elizabeth nodded, said nothing, limped slightly toward the kitchen. Trevor's jaw tightened, but he said nothing either. By 11 they were gone. Mountains of barely touched food remained, enough to feed a family for a week. Elizabeth worked methodically, scraping $100 steaks into trash bags, her face unreadable. Trevor retreated to his study, laptop open, but his eyes kept drifting to the kitchen window. Elizabeth stood over the garbage bin, perfectly still. Her shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths. She was staring at the food, all that waste, and her hands were trembling again. She glanced toward the study, then quickly pulled out a foam container from her bag. Her movements were furtive, almost frantic, as she scooped pasta and untouched vegetables into it. When she closed the container, her shoulders shook. Was she crying? She hid it in her bag and left through the side door, shoulders hunched against more than just the night air. Trevor sat in the dark long after she was gone. The image of her shaking hands burned into his mind. He paid her well, he knew he did. So why would his housekeeper need to take garbage food home like she was starving? The question haunted him through the sleepless night. Thursday afternoon, the venture capital meeting ended 2 hours early. Rare. Trevor drove home through Connecticut back roads, already planning which reports to review from his home office. The sky darkened fast. Spring storms in New England came like that, sudden and violent. Rain hammered his windshield as he turned through his gate. Then he saw her. Elizabeth. Under the old oak tree near the driveway, hunched over, completely soaked. Trevor slammed the brakes. His door was open before conscious thought caught up, the first impulsive act he'd made in 5 years. Rain drenched his suit instantly as he ran toward her. She was crying, shaking, eating from that foam container with trembling hands, looking utterly destroyed. Elizabeth, what are you doing out here? Her head snapped up. The look on her face, pure terror, shame, devastation, hit him like a physical blow. Mr. Johnson, her voice broke. Please, I can explain. Come inside, you're soaking. No. She stood, swaying, the container falling into the mud. You don't understand. I take your food. I've been taking it for months. I'm so sorry. I don't care about the food. Trevor stepped closer, rain streaming down his face. Talk to me. Please. And then it poured out of her. Not rain, but truth. Amara. Her great niece. 14 years old, orphaned 2 years ago when Elizabeth's niece overdosed. Elizabeth raising her alone on a housekeeper's salary. The girl was brilliant, straight as dreams of MIT, a way out of the cycle that had killed her mother. But there's no money, Elizabeth sobbed. My arthritis medication is $400 a month. I can't afford both the medicine and save for her future. So I choose her. I always choose her. Her voice cracked. I take your leftovers because if I don't, there's no money for SAT prep books. I hide in the rain because I'm so ashamed. Because I know what this makes me. Stop. Trevor dropped to his knees in the mud, looking up at her weathered, broken face. It makes you the strongest person I've ever met. Elizabeth collapsed then, not physically but emotionally. She fell against him, this woman who'd held everything together alone for so long, and finally broke. Trevor caught her, held her while she shattered in the rain, and something in his frozen heart cracked wide open, letting in light for the first time in 5 years. Trevor insisted on driving her home. Elizabeth protested weakly, but exhaustion had stripped away her ability to fight. She sat in his passenger seat, still soaking, staring at her trembling hands. The drive to New Haven was a transition between worlds. Manicured estates gave way to modest neighborhoods, then worn buildings with cracked facades and chain-link fences. 20 minutes, but it might as well have been different planets. Why didn't you tell me? Trevor's voice was quiet. Because asking for help means admitting I'm failing her. Elizabeth's words came out hollow. And I can't fail. She's all I have. Eyes focused on a physics textbook. Books covered every surface. Library books, second-hand textbooks, notebooks filled with careful handwriting. A small science fair trophy sat on the shelf above the couch. Amara looked up, concern flooding her face when she saw Elizabeth state, "Aunt Lizzie." "I'm fine, sweetheart." Elizabeth's voice steadied for the girl. "This is Mr. Johnson, my employer." "Nice to finally meet you." Amara stood, cautious but curious. "Aunt Lizzie talks about you sometimes." Trevor found himself sitting at their tiny table, talking with this remarkable child who wanted to study engineering at MIT. She spoke about neural networks and sustainable energy with the kind of passion he hadn't heard in years. She was brilliant, driven, everything his daughter might have become. Then he saw it, a mason jar on the counter labeled Amara's College Fund in Elizabeth's handwriting. He walked closer. Coins and small bills filled maybe a third of it. He pulled out his phone, did the mental math. $347.52. Years of Elizabeth's sacrifice. Every skipped meal, every ration medication, every foam container of leftovers. All adding up to barely enough for textbooks. Trevor couldn't breathe. His daughter's MIT tuition fund had been enough for 4 years, untouched, gathering interest in an account he'd locked away like everything else. He turned away so they wouldn't see his face. Friday morning, Trevor canceled everything. Board meetings, investor calls, all of it. He spent the day digging. Elizabeth's previous employer, a family in Greenwich, told him she'd retired at 63 after 30 years of service. Then 2 years later, she'd asked for his reference. She said her niece died and she needed to raise the girl. Came out of retirement to do it. That's the kind of woman Elizabeth is. Trevor pulled up his payroll records. What he paid her was fair, even generous, but not for 2 people. Not with medical costs. Not with college savings. The math was brutal and simple. He researched Amara's school. Public school in a struggling district, overcrowded classrooms, underfunded programs. Yet Amara had a perfect GPA. Perfect. Despite everything. The arthritis medication Elizabeth mentioned. He looked it up. Daily doses recommended. She was probably taking it every other day, maybe less. Rationing her own pain medication so a 14-year-old could dream of MIT. Then he reviewed his own finances. The number made him sick. He could fund 100 Amara's educations without even noticing the withdrawal. 100. Trevor walked through his mansion like a stranger seeing it for the first time. Empty bedrooms. 5 cars in the garage. Bank statements showing wealth that would take 3 lifetimes to spend. All of it meaningless. He stood outside Lily's room for 10 minutes before he could turn the handle. The air inside was stale, frozen in time. Her stuffed penguin sat on the bed where she'd left it. Books about marine biology lined her shelves. She'd wanted to be a doctor, save the oceans, change the world. Posters of the periodic table and constellations covered the walls. Everything she'd never be. Trevor sat on her bed, picked up the penguin, and broke. Real crying, the kind that came from somewhere deep and long buried. 5 years of grief he'd locked away with her room came pouring out. When he could breathe again, he pulled out his phone and called Dr. Chen, the therapist he hadn't seen in 18 months. But before he dialed, he sat there holding his daughter's stuffed animal, and the truth crystallized with painful clarity. "I've been so focused on controlling my pain that I became blind to everyone else's. What am I doing with all this wealth if not to help people like them?" The penguin stared at him with button eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, Trevor knew what he had to do. Monday morning, Elizabeth arrived at 7 sharp, her face a mask of mortification. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "We need to talk." Trevor's voice was gentle but firm. He led her to his study, closed the door, gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat like she was facing execution. I want to pay for Amara's education. All of it. High school tutoring, SAT prep, college, wherever she gets in. Elizabeth stood so fast the chair scraped backward. No. Absolutely not. Elizabeth, please. I can afford this easily. Let me help. I don't need charity. Her voice shook with pride and something fiercer. I've worked for everything I have. Amara needs to learn that you earn your way in this world. This isn't charity. It's investment. Trevor stood too, keeping his voice level. That girl is extraordinary. And you've earned this by being extraordinary yourself. Every day for 10 years, you've kept my life running. You've earned this 1,000 times over. If I accept this, what am I teaching her? Elizabeth's hands trembled at her sides. That we can't make it on our own. That we need to be rescued. Trevor moved around the desk, his voice quiet but intense. You're teaching her that there are people who care. That accepting help when you need it isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And that sometimes strength is letting someone help carry the weight. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Elizabeth sank back into the chair, and the tears came. I'm so tired, Mr. Johnson. My hands hurt all the time. I can't sleep. I'm terrified I'll get sick and lose this job, and then where will we be? What happens to her? Trevor knelt beside her chair. Then let me help. Please. She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her fierce pride finally cracked. Okay. The word came out broken. But I'm paying you back. Elizabeth. That's my condition. Her chin lifted. I'll pay you back. Even if it takes the rest of my life. He understood. This was how she could accept. Deal. They shook hands. But it was more than a deal, more than a transaction. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected. Something neither had words for yet. Family. 3 months changed everything. Trevor paid for Amara's SAT tutor, enrolled her in college prep courses, bought her a new laptop that didn't take 10 minutes to boot up. He covered Elizabeth's medical bills, all of them, and made sure she had proper arthritis treatment. Daily medication not rationed. Physical therapy twice a week. Elizabeth's pride struggled with each gift, but gradually she learned to accept. To say thank you without shame. Trevor started visiting their apartment. First to check on arrangements, making sure the tutor was working out, that Amara had what she needed. Then he kept coming back because he wanted to. Because Sunday dinners became something he looked forward to all week. Elizabeth cooked, Amara talked about school, and Trevor just listened, soaking in the warmth of their small kitchen like a man who'd been cold for years. Amara taught him about neural networks and quantum computing with an enthusiasm that reminded him what passion looked like. Trevor helped her with college essays, shared stories from building his company, watched her eyes light up with possibility. Elizabeth noticed Trevor softening, the rigid lines around his mouth easing, the way he laughed at Amara's jokes, tentative at first, then genuine. One evening, Amara showed him photos of her mother. I lost my mom too. Drugs. It's different from an accident, but... She looked at him with ancient eyes in a young face. I get it. The missing them part. Trevor's voice cracked when he finally told them about Sarah and Lily. About the intersection, the drunk driver, the 5 years he'd spent trying to feel nothing so he'd never hurt like that again. Small moments accumulated into something larger. Elizabeth teaching Trevor to make her special lasagna, flour on both their hands. Game nights around their tiny table. Trevor forgetting to check his phone. Amara's science project spread across his dining room table, the first time that room had been used in years. Elizabeth's health improved. Her hands steadied. The permanent wince in her face softened. She moved through his mansion differently now, not as a shadow but as someone who belonged. Trevor's mansion changed too. He opened Lily's room, donated her clothes, kept only the most precious things, started seeing Dr. Chen weekly, put family photos back on the walls, not hiding from the past, but honoring it. One evening, Elizabeth found him in his kitchen, staring at a photo of Sarah and Lily on the counter. One he'd just put back. "Why are you really doing this?" Her voice was soft but penetrating. "You don't let anyone close. You've been a ghost in this house for 5 years. My situation didn't just give you a problem to solve, it gave you permission to feel something again." She stepped closer. "You're not saving us, Trevor. We're saving each other." He looked at her, this woman who saw through everything, and realized she was absolutely right. "I know," he whispered. "And I don't want to stop." Neither did she. 6 months in, Amara's college applications were ready. MIT, Stanford, Caltech. Trevor had helped her craft essays that showcased her brilliance without hiding where she came from. Each application was a testament to resilience, to a girl who'd lost everything but refused to give up. Then Elizabeth's landlord called. The building was being sold. All tenants had 60 days to vacate. Elizabeth sat at Trevor's kitchen table, hands shaking again for the first time in months. "I can't afford anywhere else in this area. Not with Amara's school, not with rent prices now." Trevor didn't hesitate. "Move into the guest house. It's sitting empty. I'll renovate it." "Trevor, no. That's too much. Aunt Lizzie." Amara's voice was practical, mature beyond her years. "It's close to school. Close to Mr. Johnson, who's been helping me. It makes sense." The renovation took 3 weeks. Trevor was there every day, consulting with contractors, picking paint colors with Amara, making sure every detail was perfect. When moving day came, he helped carry their belongings, their whole life fitting into a few boxes and some worn furniture. It broke his heart and filled it simultaneously. The guest house transformed into a home. Small but beautiful, with morning light streaming through new windows and space that was finally truly theirs. Amara stood in her new bedroom, looking out at Trevor's property. The manicured lawn, the oak tree where everything had changed, the main house in the distance. "Is this real?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Elizabeth found Trevor on the guest house porch, watching the sunset. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have." He met her eyes. "You've given me a reason to wake up again." That night, they had dinner in Trevor's main house, the first of what would become countless meals. Elizabeth cooked in a kitchen that finally felt alive. Amara set the table, chattering about her chemistry project. Trevor sat at the head of the table that had been empty for 5 years, and realized something profound. His house hadn't felt like home since the accident. Not until now. Not until these two people who weren't his blood filled it with laughter and warmth and the messy, beautiful chaos of family. "To new beginnings," Elizabeth said, raising her glass. Trevor looked at both of them, his throat tight. "To family." They were becoming exactly that. 9 months after the rain, Amara's graduation day arrived. MIT had accepted her with a full scholarship. Trevor had quietly helped, but her brilliance had sealed it. The morning started with Amara's scream from the guest house. Trevor ran faster than he'd ever moved. Found Elizabeth collapsed on the kitchen floor, Amara kneeling beside her, phone shaking in her hand. "I called 911. I don't know what happened, she just fell." The hospital. Waiting room. Fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell and fear crystallizing into something solid. "Heart attack," the doctor said. "Mild but serious. Years of stress and overwork finally catching up." Amara sat rigid beside Trevor, staring at nothing. I can't lose her. She's all I have. Trevor pulled her close. You have me too. You both do. Your family. Elizabeth stabilized within hours. They found her awake, pale but conscious, when they entered her room. Her eyes went straight to Amara's cap and gown, still clutched in the girl's hands. Amara, you're not missing your graduation for me. I'm not going without you. Amara's voice was steel. Trevor stood. Then we'll bring the graduation to you. He made calls. Called in every favor he had. 2 hours later, the hospital courtyard was transformed. Amara walked in her cap and gown while Elizabeth sat in a wheelchair, Trevor's hands steady on the handles. The principal handed over the diploma under open sky. Then Amara gave her valedictorian speech, and Trevor felt something break open in his chest. Family isn't who you're born to, Amara said, looking directly at Elizabeth and Trevor. It's who refuses to leave your side. These two people saved my life by teaching me that accepting love isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing we can do. After, Elizabeth pulled Trevor down close, her grip surprisingly strong. I should have told you sooner. You've become my son. Not because you helped us, but because you let us help you live again. Your family, Trevor. You always will be. Trevor broke. 5 years of walls crumbling in a hospital courtyard. I lost my family and thought I could never survive that pain again. I built walls so high nothing could touch me. But all I did was build a prison. You two didn't just save me, you freed me. And I'd rather have you both in my life and risk that pain than spend another day hiding from love. 3 of them holding each other. Found family, hard-won, real and worth every risk. 1 year later, rain fell softly on Thanksgiving evening. Amara was home from MIT for the holiday, her first semester behind her. Stories of late-night problem sets and engineering labs spilling out faster than she could tell them. Elizabeth lived in the guest house now, fully recovered, working part-time for Trevor because she wanted to, not because she needed to. Her hands were steady, her smile easy. Sunday dinners had become sacred. Even when Amara was at school, she video called in, her face bright on Trevor's laptop propped against the centerpiece. Tonight, though, she was here in person, helping Elizabeth cook while Trevor attempted to mash potatoes without turning them into glue. The mansion had transformed. Lily's room was open now, her clothes donated, her favorite books given to the children's hospital. Trevor had created a scholarship in her name, the Lily Johnson Memorial Fund for Aspiring Doctors. He'd also started a foundation helping families like Elizabeth's, pairing housekeepers and service workers with resources, medical care, education funding for their children. And he was dating again. Sarah, a kind professor Elizabeth had encouraged him to meet at a fundraiser. Nothing serious yet, but something. Life, happening again. The rain started during dessert. All 3 of them noticed, glancing toward the window at the same moment. Remember that day. Elizabeth's voice was soft. Trevor set down his fork, a smile playing at his lips. How could I forget? That was the day I stopped running from life. That was the day we became a family, Amara added, reaching for both their hands. They stood at the window together, watching rain fall on the oak tree where everything had changed. Not a storm this time, just gentle autumn rain, washing everything clean. Trevor looked at the 2 women flanking him, and the words came without effort. I thought wealth was what you build to protect yourself. Elizabeth taught me that real wealth is what you're brave enough to share. It's not what you hold in your hands. It's who you hold in your heart. His voice thickened. I lost a family once, and it nearly destroyed me. But you two taught me that love isn't about protecting yourself from pain. It's about being brave enough to love again anyway. And that's the only wealth that matters. Elizabeth squeezed his hand. Amara leaned her head on his shoulder. Later, they sat at the dining room table, laughing over coffee and pie, the sound filling rooms that had been silent for too long. Trevor's mansion was finally a home. His heart was finally open. Outside, rain fell like a blessing, not a storm, and inside, three people who'd found each other in the darkness sat together in the light. Family. Real, messy, beautiful family. And that was everything. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely enjoy the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine.